The millionaire CEO never knew the waitress feeding hungry kids daily was tied to his empire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Sophia Miller had always lived a life that most people wouldn't even notice. She wasn't a high-powered CEO or a tech mogul. She wasn't someone who walked into a room and commanded attention. In fact, she worked at a local diner in a quiet part of town, serving meals to people who were more concerned with their own lives than the person behind the counter. But Sophia's life wasn't about making headlines or building empires. It was about something simpler, making sure no child ever went to bed hungry. Every day, Sophia would take what little she earned and make sure she had enough to feed the children in her neighborhood, kids who didn't have the luxury of knowing where their next meal would come from. To them, Sophia was a hero. To her, it was just what she was meant to do. But what Sophia didn't know was that one of the children she fed daily had a very important father. A father who was about to learn just how closely his life was tied to this humble waitress. It all started on a chilly Wednesday afternoon. The diner was quieter than usual, the lull between lunch and dinner giving Sophia a chance to catch her breath. She walked to the kitchen, wiped her hands on her apron, and grabbed the stack of sandwiches she had prepared for the kids. She had learned early on that small acts of kindness could make a world of difference, and feeding those kids was her small act of kindness each day. As she was about to head out the door, a tall man entered the diner, shaking the snow off his coat. Sophia paused, glancing up. He didn't look like the usual diner crowd. His suit was expensive, his posture rigid, and his eyes scanned the room, like he was calculating something. Sophia barely noticed when he made his way to the counter, sitting down without a word. She greeted him with a soft smile and asked, "What can I get you today, sir?" He looked at her for a moment, his gaze lingering a bit longer than it should have. "I'll have a coffee. Black," he replied curtly, his voice low and firm. Sophia nodded and turned to prepare the coffee. As she did, she couldn't help but notice the way he looked around the room, as though the diner was beneath him. She had seen men like him before, men who carried themselves with the weight of their success but didn't understand the struggles of those they passed by every day. She didn't let it bother her, though. She had work to do. When she returned with his coffee, she set it down in front of him, offering a smile. "Is there anything else I can get for you, sir?" He stared at her for a moment, almost as if he was considering something, before shaking his head. "No, just the coffee." She nodded again and moved to walk away, but before she could, he stopped her. "You seem different," he said, his voice softer now, as if he was trying to figure her out. "How so?" Sophia asked, a little taken aback by the change in his tone. "You don't seem like the others," he replied, looking her up and down with a sort of curiosity. Sophia wasn't sure how to respond to that. "I'm just doing my job," she said, keeping her tone polite but distant. "Right," he said, almost to himself. "Just doing your job." As he sipped his coffee, Sophia turned and went back to her work, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this man. She had no idea that the man sitting at the counter would soon become a part of her story in ways she couldn't yet understand. The next day, as the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the streets of the city, Sophia Miller was finishing up her shift at the diner. It had been a long day, filled with the usual stream of customers, the occasional grumpy businessman, and the regulars who always had a smile for her. But today felt different. There had been a certain tension in the air, an undercurrent of something she couldn't quite name. As she wiped down the counter, her mind kept drifting back to the man who had sat at table 7 the previous day. Bradley Williams, CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the world. She had noticed how he seemed to be studying her, how he looked at her as though she were more than just a waitress. She had brushed it off, thinking nothing of it. He was just another businessman, right? But something in his gaze lingered in her thoughts. As she grabbed her coat and walked to the back to clock out, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her best friend, Mia. "Dinner at my place tonight? It's been ages since we hung out." Sophia smiled to herself. A night off was exactly what she needed. She agreed and quickly made her way to the door, eager to unwind. But just as she stepped out, The familiar sound of the diner door chimed, signaling the arrival of a customer. It was him, Bradley Williams. Standing at the threshold, his tall figure framed by the harsh winter light, he looked out of place in the humble diner. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. What was he doing here again? Sophia, he said, his voice deep and controlled. I need to talk to you. It's important. She froze for a moment, unsure of how to respond. She wasn't sure if she should be flattered or worried. He had come back to the diner, of all places. She motioned for him to sit at the counter, trying to keep her composure. As he sat down, he seemed more relaxed than before, but his eyes betrayed a sense of urgency. I have a business proposition for you, he said, his tone serious. It's not something I'd usually do, but I've been thinking about it all night. Sophia's curiosity piqued, though she remained wary. What kind of proposition? She asked, wiping down the counter as she waited for his response. Bradley paused for a moment, as though carefully choosing his words. I know you've been helping kids around here. Feeding them, looking after them. I didn't realize until yesterday just how much you do for this community. He leaned forward slightly, his gaze locking with hers. I want to help you. I have the resources, the connections, and the ability to make a difference. But I need your expertise. I need someone who understands the heart of the community like you do. Sophia was taken aback. She had always kept her personal life separate from her work, never imagining that someone like Bradley would even take notice. But there he was, offering her something she never thought possible, a chance to make a real difference. I don't know what to say, she replied softly, still processing what he was suggesting. Why me? Why now? Bradley looked down at the counter, his fingers tapping lightly on the wood. Because you see things differently. You're not just feeding kids. You're building something, giving them a chance at a future. That's what I need. His words hung in the air, and for a moment, all Sophia could do was stare at him. She had spent her entire life helping others, but she had never imagined that someone with his wealth and power would recognize her efforts, let alone want to invest in them. I'm not sure I'm the right person for this, she said, unsure of what to feel. I've always just done what I can. I'm not someone who belongs in your world. Bradley smiled softly, his eyes showing a warmth she hadn't expected. Maybe not, but I think you belong in a world where people like you are seen, heard, and valued. I can make that happen. Together, we can change the lives of more kids than you ever imagined. Sophia felt a rush of emotions, confusion, disbelief, and a tiny spark of hope. Could this really be the chance she had been waiting for? To not only continue her work, but to expand it beyond anything she had ever dreamed? She didn't know. But one thing was clear. This was the beginning of something much bigger than she had ever anticipated. The next few days were a whirlwind for Sophia Miller. She couldn't stop thinking about Bradley Williams and the proposition he had laid before her. She had spent her whole life helping children in her small neighborhood. But this was something different. This wasn't just about feeding a few kids. It was about transforming lives, including her own. Sophia had always known that one day, she might be able to do more for the community she loved, but she never imagined it would come in the form of a business proposition. From a billionaire CEO, her mind raced with questions. Could she trust him? Was this truly an opportunity to make a real impact? Or was it just another one of those empty promises that came with strings attached? As she sat in her small apartment that evening, the weight of the decision seemed to settle heavily on her shoulders. She had always been cautious, never one to rush into things. But something about Bradley's offer felt different. He wasn't offering her money, at least not directly. He was offering her the chance to expand her work, to give those kids the opportunities they deserved. For years, Sophia had worked tirelessly, often sacrificing her own time, money, and energy to help others. But now, with Bradley's offer on the table, it felt like she had a chance to take her efforts to the next level. Could she really be the one to bring about that kind of change? As she sat with her thoughts, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mia. Are you okay? You've been quiet the past few days. Sophia smiled at the message. Mia had been her best friend for years, and she could always count on her for support. I'm just thinking about some things, Sophia replied. Things that might change everything. Mia's reply came quickly. What do you mean? What's going on? Sophia took a deep breath and typed out her response, her fingers hesitating for a moment before she hit send. Bradley Williams came into the diner the other day. He offered me a chance to work with him, to help more kids. But I'm not sure if I'm ready for something like this. There was a pause before Mia replied, her message short but full of support. Sophia, this could be everything you've worked for. You've been helping those kids for years. This could take your work to places you never imagined. Don't second-guess yourself. Sophia read the message several times, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. Could Mia be right? Was she truly ready for something like this? The next day, she found herself back at the diner, standing at the counter as she served her regulars. But today was different. Bradley had left a message for her, asking if she was ready to meet again. She hadn't been able to stop thinking about it, and now the time had come to make a decision. As she wiped down the counter, her mind kept racing, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure what the right answer was. Sophia had always trusted her instincts, but now, her heart and mind were in conflict. Should she stay in her familiar world, helping kids one meal at a time, or should she take the leap into the unknown and trust that Bradley's offer would allow her to help even more people? When Bradley walked in later that afternoon, the decision had been made. She could see it in his eyes. He wasn't just offering her a job. He was offering her the chance to make a difference. A real difference. Sophia, Bradley said as he sat at the counter, his tone more relaxed than before. I'm glad you're here. We need to talk about how we're going to make this happen. Sophia nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't sure what the next steps would be, but she knew one thing for sure. Her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The following week, Sophia met Bradley at his office, a sleek, modern space that screamed success. As she walked through the door, she was struck by the contrast between this world and the simple, humble diner she called home. The polished floors, the towering windows, and the expensively dressed staff made her feel like she was stepping into a completely different life. Bradley greeted her with a warm smile, offering her a seat at a large, glass conference table. As she sat down, she couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. I'm glad you could make it, Sophia, Bradley said, his tone friendly but businesslike. We've got a lot to discuss. Sophia nodded, trying to steady her nerves. She had been preparing for this meeting all week, but now that she was here, she found herself feeling a little overwhelmed. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady but quiet. Good, Bradley replied, leaning forward slightly. Let's start with the big picture. We're going to create a non-profit organization, one that will provide meals, mentorship, and educational opportunities to underprivileged children across the country. And I want you to be at the heart of it. Sophia blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. You want me to lead this organization? She asked, her voice a little shaky. Bradley smiled, a glint of admiration in his eyes. Yes, exactly. You've been doing this work on a small scale for so long, but I know you have the potential to do much more. You understand these kids, their needs, and their struggles better than anyone else. You've got the heart for this, Sophia, and I want to give you the platform to make a real impact. Sophia felt a lump in her throat. The opportunity was everything she had ever dreamed of, but it also felt like a heavy responsibility. She had always worked alone, managing her small corner of the world, feeding the kids who needed it most. But now, she was being asked to take on something much bigger, something that could change the lives of countless children. I don't know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is a huge step. I've always done this on my own. I'm not sure I'm ready for something this big. Bradley's expression softened, and he leaned back in his chair, his hands folding in front of him. I get it. It's a lot to take in. But think about what we can do together. You've always been the one to make a difference in these kids' lives, Sophia. Now, imagine what we could do with the resources and support of an entire organization behind you. Sophia's mind raced as she thought about all the children she had helped over the years. The ones who came to her when they had nowhere else to turn, the ones who relied on her for more than just food, but for a sense of safety and hope. Could she really lead something that could touch so many lives? Could she step into a role that would demand so much of her? I don't know if I'm ready, she said again, her voice filled with doubt. I've never done anything like this before. Bradley nodded, his gaze steady and reassuring. I understand. But that's why I'm here, Sophia. You won't be doing this alone. I'll be there every step of the way, providing you with the resources and guidance you need. You've got the passion. I've got the business know-how. Together, we can make a real difference. Sophia sat in silence, her thoughts a whirlwind of uncertainty and excitement. This was everything she had worked for, everything she had hoped for. But it was also terrifying. Could she really take on this role? Could she be the leader that these children needed? As she looked across the table at Bradley, she saw something in his eyes, a sincerity, a belief in her, that gave her a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could do this. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "Okay," she said, her voice firmer now. "I'll do it." Bradley's face broke into a wide smile. "That's what I like to hear." As he stood to shake her hand, Sophia felt a sense of determination building inside her. This was the start of something bigger than herself. And no matter how scared she felt, she knew she couldn't back down now. She had a chance to change the lives of children everywhere, and she wasn't about to let that opportunity slip away. The days following Sophia's decision were a blur. She met with Bradley and his team multiple times, discussing the finer details of the nonprofit they were about to launch. They spoke about fundraising, outreach, and partnerships, about the children they wanted to help and the programs that could transform their futures. Sophia was amazed by the resources Bradley and his company could provide, but the more they planned, the more she realized just how big this endeavor was. It wasn't just about giving out meals anymore. It was about creating opportunities, about giving kids a chance to break the cycle of poverty, to dream bigger than their circumstances allowed. And the weight of that responsibility was overwhelming. She would have to make decisions that affected not just her community, but children from all over the country. As she sat in Bradley's sleek office, a part of her couldn't help but feel inadequate. What if she failed? What if, after all this effort, she couldn't deliver the change she had promised? But every time doubt crept into her mind, she remembered the kids she had helped over the years, the smiles on their faces when they got a hot meal or a safe place to sleep for the night. That was why she had to push through the fear. It wasn't about her, it was about them. It was about the ones who didn't have a voice, the ones who had no one else to turn to. "You're doing great, Sophia," Bradley's voice pulled her out of her thoughts. She glanced up to see him standing by the door, his expression sincere. "This is going to be amazing, I know it. You've got the passion, the heart. Now it's just about making it all come together." His words were meant to reassure her, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't enough. I never imagined it would be this big," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Bradley nodded, his expression softening. "No one does. But you're not alone in this. You've got me, you've got my team, and you've got a whole network of people who believe in what we're doing. And don't forget, Sophia, you've been doing this your whole life. You've been leading kids to a better future for years. This is just the next step." His confidence was contagious, and for the first time in days, she felt a small spark of hope. Maybe she could do this after all. Maybe this was what she was meant to do. Later that evening, after a long day of meetings and planning, Sophia sat in her small apartment, looking out the window at the city below. It felt like a lifetime ago that she had been serving meals in the diner, just trying to make it through another day. But now, with the nonprofit taking shape, she realized how much she had already changed. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a leader, someone who had the potential to change the lives of thousands of children. As she thought about the journey ahead, a sense of purpose washed over her. It was scary, it was daunting, but it was also the most meaningful thing she had ever done. The phone buzzed beside her, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Mia. "How's everything going? I'm so proud of you, you know." Sophia smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thanks, Mia. I'm scared, but I think I'm ready for this. I think this is the start of something big." She sent the message and leaned back in her chair, letting out a long breath. There was still so much to do, so many obstacles to overcome, but for the first time in a long time, Sophia felt like she was on the right path. She had no idea what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going to stop fighting for the kids who needed her the most. And with that thought, she stood up, ready to face the challenges ahead. This was just the beginning. As the weeks passed, Sophia found herself deep into the work of the new nonprofit, and the reality of the challenge ahead hit her like a wave. The idea of helping thousands of children was no longer a distant dream, it was happening. Bradley and his team were supportive, offering her guidance and resources, but the decisions were still hers to make. She had to choose where to allocate funds, which schools to partner with, and how to reach the kids who needed help the most. The pressure was overwhelming at times, but it was also exhilarating. For the first time, she felt like she was truly making an impact. One afternoon, Bradley called her into his office. As she sat across from him, she could see the concern in his eyes. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice kind but serious. "I'm good," Sophia replied, though the words felt hollow. "It's just a lot. Sometimes I feel like I'm in over my head." Bradley leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped together. "I know it's a lot, but remember why you're doing this. You've always had this fire in you, this drive to help people. That's why I believe in you." Sophia looked at him, her heart heavy with doubt. "But what if I fail? What if I can't do it? What if I can't live up to what they need?" Bradley's expression softened, and he reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on hers. "You won't fail. And even if things don't go exactly as planned, that's not the end of the world. You're doing something that matters, and that's more than most people can say. Just take it one step at a time." His words struck a chord with Sophia, reminding her of why she had started this journey. She had never expected it to be easy, but now, more than ever, she knew she had to push through the doubts. This wasn't just about her. It was about the kids, the ones who needed her the most. Later that evening, as Sophia walked home from the office, she passed by the park where she had first started giving out meals to the children. It felt like a lifetime ago, but the memories came flooding back. She remembered the faces of the kids, their eyes wide with gratitude when they received a hot meal. She remembered the conversations she had with their parents, hearing about the struggles they faced and how little support they had. It was then that Sophia realized how much she had already changed. She wasn't just a waitress anymore, handing out food in the shadows. She was a leader, someone who could change lives. But with that realization came the weight of responsibility. It was one thing to offer a meal here and there, but now she was responsible for an entire organization, one that could either succeed or fail based on her decisions. As she sat on a bench in the park, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mia. "Dinner tomorrow night? You need to take a break and have some fun." Sophia smiled at the message. Mia had been her rock through all of this, and it was just what she needed. "Yes, let's do it," she typed back. "I could use a night off." The next evening, as she sat across from Mia at their favorite diner, Sophia couldn't help but laugh at how normal everything felt. It was a reminder that, even though her life had changed in so many ways, she was still the same person at her core. As they chatted about everything and nothing, Sophia realized that she had been so focused on the big picture that she had forgotten to take care of herself. She had been giving everything she had to the nonprofit, but she couldn't forget to live in the moment, to appreciate the small joys in life. "You're doing great, Soph," Mia said, her voice full of warmth. "But remember, you don't have to do it all on your own. It's okay to ask for help." Sophia nodded, grateful for Mia's support. "I know. I'm just so afraid of messing up. But I'm learning that I can't do it all. I have to trust others, too." Mia smiled. "You're stronger than you think. And you're not alone in this." As they finished their meal and said their goodbyes, Sophia felt a renewed sense of hope. She had a team behind her, people who believed in her and the work she was doing. It wasn't going to be easy, but she was ready for the challenge. The next day, she woke up with a sense of purpose that she hadn't felt in weeks. She had a long way to go, but she knew one thing for sure. She was doing the right thing. And with that, she set off to face the day, ready to take the next step in her journey. The weeks flew by, and the nonprofit began to take shape. Sophia's days were filled with meetings, planning sessions, and networking, all while managing the demands of running an organization that was still in its infancy. The vision she and Bradley had shared was slowly becoming a reality, but the road to success was filled with obstacles. One of the biggest challenges was fundraising. Despite their best efforts, it wasn't easy to convince potential donors to take a chance on an organization that was still in its early stages. But Sophia was determined. She had seen the need firsthand. The children, the families, the communities, and she couldn't stop now. She knew the impact they could have, and that was enough to keep her going. One day, as she sat at her desk, reviewing a stack of donor proposals, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and saw it was Bradley. "Hey, Bradley," she answered, trying to sound upbeat despite the stress she was feeling. "Hey, Sophia." Bradley's voice was warm, but she could hear the hint of excitement in his tone. "I've got some good news. I just secured a meeting with a major foundation. They're interested in potentially partnering with us." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. A major foundation? This could be the break they needed. "That's amazing," she exclaimed, sitting up straighter. "When is the meeting?" "Next week," Bradley replied. I want you to come with me. We'll pitch them on the vision, and I know you'll be able to convey the passion and commitment you've put into this project. They'll see how important it is. Sophia felt a mix of nerves and excitement. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for, but it also meant more pressure. I'll be there, she said, trying to sound confident. Thanks for making this happen, Bradley. No problem. You've earned it, he replied before hanging up. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Bradley and his team helped Sophia refine the pitch, and they worked late into the night, going over every detail. Sophia knew this was her moment. She couldn't afford to mess it up. As the day of the meeting approached, Sophia found herself more anxious than she had ever been. She had faced challenges before, but this felt different. This was about securing the future of the nonprofit, about ensuring that the work they were doing would continue to grow and make an impact. She couldn't let this opportunity slip away. The morning of the meeting, Sophia stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her outfit and trying to calm her nerves. She had always been someone who preferred to stay in the background, but now she was the one who needed to step into the spotlight. As she arrived at the foundation's office, she was struck by the sleek, polished environment. The modern building, the suits, the luxury, everything screamed success. This was a world she was still getting used to. But she was here for a reason. Bradley greeted her as soon as she walked through the door, his smile reassuring. You're going to do great, he said, his voice full of confidence. Let's get this done. They were ushered into a large conference room, where a group of executives sat waiting for them. Sophia's heart pounded as she took her seat, but she forced herself to breathe deeply, reminding herself of why she was here. She wasn't just representing the nonprofit. She was representing the children who needed help, the families who depended on them. She couldn't let fear hold her back. Bradley began the presentation, outlining the nonprofit's mission and the work they had already accomplished. Then, it was Sophia's turn. As she stood up to speak, she looked out at the room of faces and took a deep breath. I've seen firsthand the difference a simple meal can make, she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. But it's not just about feeding kids. It's about giving them hope, giving them the chance to build a better future. As she spoke, she could see the executives listening, their expressions changing as they absorbed her words. She wasn't just talking about statistics or numbers. She was talking about real people, real lives. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Sophia felt a surge of pride. She had said what she needed to say, and she had done it with passion and conviction. After a long pause, one of the executives spoke. We're impressed, she said, her tone thoughtful. This is exactly the kind of project we like to support. Sophia's heart leaped in her chest. They were in. It wasn't a done deal yet, but it was a huge step forward. The rest of the meeting was a blur of discussions, questions, and next steps. By the end of it, they had secured the partnership. As they left the building, Bradley turned to her, his grin wide. I told you you'd do great. Sophia couldn't help but smile back. It was a victory, but it was only the beginning. She had taken a big step forward, but there was still so much work to be done, and she was ready for it. The partnership with the foundation opened new doors for Sophia and the nonprofit. With the funding now secured, they could expand their programs and reach more children. But as the organization grew, so did the challenges. Sophia found herself facing difficult decisions daily. How to prioritize resources, how to scale their impact without compromising quality, and how to ensure they stayed true to their mission. She spent long nights reviewing reports, speaking with community leaders, and brainstorming with her team. Bradley remained a constant source of support, always offering advice and encouragement. But Sophia knew the success of the nonprofit was ultimately on her shoulders. One day, as she sat in her office, looking over a list of potential new partners, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Mia. You're doing incredible work, but don't forget to breathe. When's the last time you took a break? Sophia smiled at the message. Mia had always been the one to remind her of the importance of balance. Sophia typed back quickly. I promise I'll take a break soon. But even as she hit send, she knew that taking a break wasn't in the cards just yet. The nonprofit was growing fast, and there was always more work to be done. That evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Bradley called her. Sophia, I know you've been working nonstop, but I need to talk to you about something important. What's going on? Sophia asked, her voice weary. We've got an opportunity to expand into a new city, Bradley explained. But it's going to require a lot of resources. I think it's the right move for the nonprofit, but I need to know what you think. Sophia sat up straighter, her mind instantly going into overdrive. Expanding into a new city could mean reaching more kids, but it also meant more responsibility, more logistics, and more potential obstacles. She knew this was a crucial decision for the nonprofit's future. Let's meet tomorrow and go over the details, she said, her voice steady. I need to think about it, but I want to make sure we're making the right choice. The next day, they sat down in Bradley's office, going over the potential expansion plans. Sophia was struck by the magnitude of the opportunity. This could be the breakthrough they had been working towards, but it was also risky. We've built a strong foundation here, Sophia said, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. But we can't lose sight of the communities we've already committed to. If we expand, we have to make sure we can give every city the same level of care. Bradley nodded, clearly understanding her concerns. I know. That's why I think it's important that we only expand when we're ready. We need to make sure we have the infrastructure and the support in place. But I also know that you're capable of handling this. You've already proven that. His words were reassuring, but Sophia still felt the weight of the decision. The nonprofit was at a crossroads, and she knew whatever choice she made would shape the future of the organization. As the meeting came to a close, Sophia took a deep breath. Let's move forward with it, she said, her voice firm. But we do it with caution. We take the time to make sure we can maintain the quality of our work. We don't rush this. Bradley's smile widened. I knew you'd make the right decision. As they shook hands, Sophia felt a sense of clarity settle over her. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that she wasn't alone. She had a team she trusted, and together, they could make a real difference. That night, as she walked home, she allowed herself to feel a small sense of pride. The nonprofit had come so far, and the journey was just beginning. With every step she took, she knew she was closer to creating the kind of lasting change she had always dreamed of. And no matter how difficult the road ahead might be, she was ready to face it head-on. Months passed, and the nonprofit continued to expand, reaching new cities and touching more lives. Sophia's hard work and determination were paying off, and every day brought new challenges and triumphs. She had found herself at the center of something far greater than she had ever imagined. Despite the success, the weight of responsibility never fully left her shoulders. There were still moments of doubt, times when the stress of overseeing a growing organization seemed almost too much to bear. But as she walked through the office, looking at the team she had built and the kids whose lives they were changing, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was her purpose, and it had become her life's work. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk, reviewing reports and preparing for an upcoming fundraiser, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Bradley. I need to talk to you about something important. Meet me in 30 minutes. Sophia frowned slightly, wondering what it could be. Over the past few months, they had built a strong partnership, and Bradley had been her rock through all of the ups and downs. But something about this message felt different. She glanced at the clock and stood up, grabbing her notes before heading to his office. When she arrived, she found Bradley sitting behind his desk, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a serious expression. What's going on? She asked, a little nervous. Bradley motioned for her to sit, and she did so, trying to read his face for any hint of what was happening. We've been doing great, he began, but we've run into a problem. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. What kind of problem? There's been a shift in the funding landscape, he explained. Some of our major donors are pulling out, and it's impacting our ability to expand like we planned. The words hit Sophia like a punch to the gut. She had known there would be hurdles along the way, but she hadn't expected this. How bad is it? She asked, her voice shaky. It's manageable, but we need to act fast, Bradley replied. I've been in talks with some potential new donors, but it's going to take time to secure their support. In the meantime, we might need to pause some of the expansion efforts. Sophia felt a wave of frustration and fear wash over her. They had worked so hard to get to this point, and now everything felt like it was hanging in the balance. What do we do now? She asked, trying to steady her breath. Bradley looked at her with a mixture of concern and resolve. We keep going. We double down on what we can control. We focus on the kids, on the communities that are already relying on us. And we don't give up. Sophia nodded slowly, absorbing his words. It was easy to get lost in the pressure, to let the setbacks define the path forward. But Bradley was right. They couldn't let the uncertainty stop them. They had a mission, and they had to stay true to it. Over the next few weeks, Sophia threw herself into her work, meeting with community leaders, organizing events, and working tirelessly to keep the nonprofit moving forward. She knew they couldn't stop the challenges that came their way, but she was determined to push through them. With Bradley's support, she managed to secure a few new donors, and while it wasn't the full funding they needed, it was enough to keep things going. One evening, as Sophia sat in her office, reviewing the latest financial reports, she allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't perfect, but they had survived the storm. The nonprofit was still standing, still growing, and still changing lives. And that was enough. She knew the road ahead would be filled with more obstacles, but she was ready for whatever came next. She had come too far to turn back now.